You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on.
Hello and welcome to our second episode of Behind the Scenes of Strife, which is out now on Binge. My name is Jessie Stevens. I am a co-producer on Strife. I was in the writer's room and I wrote episode 4 of this season, which we are going to be talking about today. And I'm joined by Mia Freedman. Mia's book, Work-Strife Balance, was the inspiration for the series. She is an executive producer. And finally, we have Sarah Scheller. Sarah is also an executive producer. She is the lead writer. She ran those writers' rooms and wrote a few episodes on this season, and she is the showrunner. Today, we are going to cover episodes 4, 5 and 6. So in episode 4, we open on Evelyn on live TV, and she is asked to give a woman's comment on the news. Claire and I co-wrote this one, by the way, and we had a lot of fun with this. Mia, people might be surprised to learn that every now and then you've been on live TV and you've actually said something you regret. So tell us about the pressure of live television.
Well, I never thought there was pressure.
You were on TV a lot. Like you've done lots of television.
All the time.
And
it's
you
my happy
never
place.
get nervous.
Sorry, it was my happy place. Yeah, I did everything. I did so much breakfast television in particular, but also current affairs shows and all of those kinds of things. I've done a lot of live radio. I'm very comfortable because I've since learned my ADHD likes it because it's quick. Mm-hmm. You have to synthesize information quickly.
And you don't have a week to prep. So you can only read what you can read.
Correct. Yeah. And you have to deliver a good soundbite. So it's just the right type of hard for my brain. Pre-Twitter, that was fine because you would talk in context and people either liked what you said or they didn't like what you said. I could always deliver good sound bites. Like I'm very good at live TV if it wasn't for social media. So the problem is as soon as social media came along, particularly Twitter, is that someone will take what you said, misinterpret it either willfully or accidentally, and then everybody will start reacting to what they read, not what you actually said, and they didn't see it in context. And then there's a whole argument about something that you didn't say or didn't mean. And so that's when after a few times, I realised it was incredibly dangerous for me to do live TV because I might say something and it might be a joke that didn't land, or I might use a bad comparison or something, and it'll be great TV in that moment, but what happens after that moment
there's no margin for error.
None. I'm not skilled enough to do it.
Yeah, and I think that in this context, I don't know if anyone's good at live television.
Well, you are. You are very good at it. There are people like you, like, Julia Baird, Rachel Corbett, Carrie Bickmore. Like I've watched you guys, I've watched Carrie do it for hours and hours and hundreds of hours. I think there's only one time when she accidentally fucked up when she said Qantas instead of Qantas.
And that was funny.
But literally that's in thousands of hours of live TV. So it's not that no one can do it anymore. It's that I can't do it anymore. So it's one of those funny things that I've become worse at it over time.
But I will say I think being a host rather than being a guest is much easier in terms of she's probably getting fed things and she's got a script. Whereas when you're just a guest and you're unscripted, that's hard.
Your job is to go off the cuff, and sometimes there are contexts in which they're almost, I'm not going to say they're trying to get you, but later on we see a bit of a Q&A type conversation, and in those you're put on the spot and your job is to have an opinion. And when you have an opinion, not everyone's going to like it. 2012 is when, and as she's growing Eve Life, Evelyn is growing Eve Life, courting attention is part of the economy and it's all good. And I remember there was a period where if a post on Mamamia got 1,000 comments, it was a win. But Evelyn's starting to learn in this that it really depends on what those comments are saying. Because if 999 of them are negative, then is that the kind of attention that you want? She's learning that attention isn't always a good thing. How did you sort of play with that theme throughout the season, Sarah?
Yeah, that's a big theme, and I think that will continue throughout subsequent seasons because it's such a part of that media. And Mia's right, once social media is involved, it's just so tricky. But yeah, I think it's
people are sort of
present throughout.
Accuse you of courting it as well. Like there would be crises and there would be all these problems. They'd go, Mamamia purposely stuffs up for attention. It's like, no, we really, that was a genuine error.
Well, when you employ humans make mistakes. And the problem with being Evelyn is that she's on the line for everyone's mistakes. And, of course, a lot of them are her own.
Yeah.
And the biggest ones and the most interesting ones to the rest of the world are her own. But that pressure is fairly unique.
I think so. And also keeping her active in the drama, it made more sense for us to have Evelyn causing this action rather than she just reacting to other things. So it's her pressing publish, or it's her doing radio or on live TV.
This episode is about the unretouched images that she publishes that is loosely based on something that happened, isn't it? Was it Lena Dunham? Can you remember?
Yeah, there was Lena Dunham. There was also a Faith Hill cover, which I think was early on.
So this was definitely something that was happening.
So Lena Dunham, around the height of Girls, was asked to be on the cover of American Vogue. And it was reasonably early on in Jezebel, where women's media, including Mamamia, we were really positioning ourselves in opposition to glossy women's magazines with their retouching and their sanitised version of women's lives. We were the antidote to that. So what happened is that I think Jezebel actually put a call out for anyone that had unretouched images, because the whole point of Girls and why Lena Dunham was so refreshing is because it was not the usual body type. It was not the usual way women were portrayed, which Jezebel were all about. They loved that. Women loved that, responded to it. But the idea was that in the same way that Anna Wintour told Oprah Winfrey she had to lose weight before she was going to be on the cover of Vogue, and Oprah did, and very proudly told everyone that she had. This is probably in the early 90s. Everyone assumed that Lena Dunham was going to be really retouched. And so they got the unretouched images, someone leaked them to them, and they ran the cover and the unretouched images side by side and showed everything that was done. And the idea was to do a gotcha for Vogue. But Lena Dunham came out and said, and actually the retouching wasn't that much.
It was pretty small, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit. It was not the best case of that because there's lighting, there's hair and makeup, there's 100 shots done and one's chosen. Like, it wasn't just a snap that someone took of her, you know, in the bathroom. Lena Dunham came out and said, I was really excited to do this and you've really wrecked it and you've actually done your gotcha on me.
Who is a woman who is not a traditionally like a straight-sized person you would see on the cover of magazines.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they ever quite recovered from that, Jezebel. Like it was...
it was a real thing of when a woman turned on them and it was like, oh, we thought we were helping you, but it's in the cause of feminism in the big picture.
We attacked a woman.
You've got individual women's choices, and we learnt that early on, and it was like, don't diss the ladies. Not that they were trying to diss Lena Dunham, but in proving a point about the media and beauty standards, they humiliated an individual woman.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we tried to tweak that somewhat, and it might have been lost a little bit in the delivery of it, but the cover that we have, which is of an actress, Gwen Lewis, who is played by Kylie Minogue.
Can we talk about, just put a pin in that and just come back to how that happened? Go on, keep going.
And the headline to that, because Gwen Lewis is an actress in her late 40s and had taken some time off to look after her child and had come back and was relaunching her career. The title, the copy that went with the cover shot was meant to be Gwen Lewis Bears All, like as you've never seen her before. So it was kind of meant to be a untouched, real images. So Evelyn's point was, oh, shit, they're lying. They're lying on the cover. So I can sort of see Evelyn's point there, and it certainly wasn't going after Gwen Lewis. She was going after the magazine, happened to be her ex-employer.
Where do you land? Do you land on Evelyn's side or Gwen's side?
I'm on Evelyn's side with you.
Yeah. Mia, are you on Evelyn's side? Or you're definitely on Evelyn's side.
No, I understand now. The thing is that everyone used to think that it was the magazines, right? It's them, and in many cases it was the magazine editors, and they're the ones, and aren't they terrible, airbrushing all these pictures. What I learned is that when I became an editor, a lot of celebrities demand the retouching, and there are certain celebrities who are, say, very famous supermodels from the 90s who will not approve a photo without supplying their own retoucher. And that would cause problems because you'd get an image back and it would be like, oh my God, this doesn't even look like that person. And then I've also had the experience of when I did a shoot for the Women's Weekly many years ago and Mamamia was just starting, and I said, I'll do it, but no retouching. And the editor at the time said to me, she spent the whole month with all her staff coming in and begging her to let them retouch me because they're like, we just want to make her look better. And at the time, Anna Bligh was on the cover Anna Bligh, who was the Premier of Queensland, and she's a good 10, 20 years older than me. She looked younger than me when you came to my images, and I know what it's like for your heart to fall a little bit and go, oh. But that was still with a trailer of hair and makeup, like a million shots, like hours of preparation, control undies, and I still didn't look perfect. But of course I didn't, because I'm a human person.
We had lots of fun in the script with Gwen and with that tension, and there's moments where she reflects on that pylon. How the hell did we get to Kylie? How did Kylie
Don't look at
me?
Well, her and Asher are very good friends.
Oh my God, I love it.
I don't actually know. Oh, actually, I do
Bruna's
know.
idea.
It was Bruna's
to have
idea,
Kylie.
yeah.
So they met on, I think it was Swing Safari, a movie that they did. I think they both worked on that and became quite close. And, you know, in the past few years, Kylie's moved back to Melbourne, and so I think they see each other a bit. Yeah, so maybe it was Bruna's idea originally, and then Asher reached out. And Kylie, we just got really lucky. She'd been in LA shooting the video for Padam Padam.
Oh my God, which blew up.
I was like, oh, that's annoying. Like, what video for some little song?
Come on, Kylie, nothing will be as good as I can be so lucky.
Get back to being our show.
So true.
And so she came back when she was like, I mean, the day that I met her, I'm not sure if you were on set that day. You might have been. It was to talk about the character, and she literally had flown in, I think, from London or from LA that day. And she was sitting opposite me, and she was like just drinking coffee and just being completely normal. And I just could not believe it. But she was so invested, and she's so smart.
fantastic.
She's so smart.
I thought it was really, brave is an overused word, and I know it sounds a bit hyperbolic, but I was really surprised that she wanted to tackle and shine a light on that aspect of her life.
It was very like subversive for someone like Kylie to do that.
And because she was saying that she's had these experiences obviously all the time, and she said what they'll always do is lengthen her limbs. She said they always make her look taller, and they'll always make her thighs longer, and, you know, and she's like, it's really annoying because, you know, everyone knows that I'm, you know,
short.
just, little. But they can't help but just stretch her limbs. So she had personal experience with it. And she was,
that's interesting.
Yeah, and so she was really happy to come and have a play, and she had a really good time.
On that episode as well, there is, Mia, can you remember who the Opal interview is based on? So Opal interviews a famous director, and I'm going to have to give Monique Boley a heads up because I have not warned her that we have mined her personal trauma for this scene. But Monique Boley, who used to work at Mamamia, interviewed Amy Schumer, and she was so excited, and she just went, I love her. She's probably overprepared, and she turned up, and Amy wasn't going to play. And
Mons had gags. I think she opened with, what's it like being someone in comedy with a vagina? And Amy Schumer was at the end of this press tour for Trainwreck. And this went viral. This actually went viral. And Amy Schumer was just like,
not
gave
in the
her
mood.
nothing.
Yeah.
She was not in the mood. And she clearly was, you know, in hindsight, I can see she was clearly struggling with the compromises that she was having to make.
Yeah.
And she's since come out and said she was told she had to lose weight for that role, and she had to, her whole shtick and her whole creativity is about being subversive and all of those things. And even though the films that she made were slightly subversive, she's since said, look, I'm back to doing stand-up because then I don't have to lose weight. I don't have to go around the world and talk shit to journalists. So she clearly was hating on that process. Yeah. And Mons just walked in at the wrong time with the wrong approach.
I did see it. And so the jumper bit, was it the
jumper, the woolly jumper? Where yes, that's right.
So Amy Schumer said, oh, I like your jumper or something.
And she was like, do you want to touch it? And she was like, no, it's awful. It's awful.
So we kind of, I mean, I hope Monica is okay with this, but yeah, we completely stole that idea where Opal's wearing these earrings and Layla says, I like your earrings. She goes, do you want them? Do you want them?
Do you want to put them in your ears?
Because we wanted to show, I was on set on the day that was filmed. I had to keep leaving because I was laughing so much. Bibi was so brilliant, and the actor that played the director was fantastic. She was just
she was straight and so American,
straight
like she had such an American energy.
And they did it again and again and again, and Bibi just brought it, and I just kept leaving because it was so funny. Because also, if you've never been in one of those junket situations, they're completely unnatural for everybody. I mean, they're unnatural for the actors. I can't imagine. You've obviously been in Hollywood. What's it like from an actor's point of view?
It's like a
Journalists from all over the world.
dating, when you do fast speed dating.
And they hate it.
Yeah, they hate it.
Everyone
They hate it.
hates
And they
it.
have done
Everyone hates it.
400 interviews.
Yeah.
And every journalist's like, I'll ask something different. And they're like, please don't ask something different.
Like,
And then-
I actually did it one day in LA as a journalist. So I was interviewing Jeremy Piven from Entourage, and he's notorious for being quite difficult. And I was the last interview of the day, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to get crucified because it was like tired and grumpy. The media, the PR girl was just like, if he gets a little bit belligerent or, just call it, get out of there.
Save yourself.
He was all right. He was
Because he
fine.
knew it was the last one.
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
Day.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so true. Episode 5, Mia, this is where Evelyn interviews the Prime Minister. You've done this a few times. You had Julia Gillard in the old office. You've had Malcolm Turnbull, lots of different politicians. Do you get nervous? Because that's pretty high stakes. You almost have like a democratic responsibility to do something smart. I don't know.
Yeah.
What are you meant to do
So
with them?
I remember the first time I got to interview Julia, or maybe it was the second time. It was the second time, actually. So she'd already come into the Mamamia office the first time, which was great. And the second time, it was during an election campaign, and she didn't have time to come back in the office. She was, campaigning, and she was everywhere. And so we were trying to organise it, and her people ended up saying, look, if you fly to Melbourne, you can fly with her on the jet back to Sydney because she's got to come back to Sydney. So meet her in Melbourne, except it was the day of Remy, my youngest child's birthday. He was turning 1, 2 maybe. And I was like, oh no. And I can't ask that, I got to take this opportunity. So we decided to just move Remy's birthday.
Yes.
So like he won't
know.
He won't know. And I was really nervous, and I had to get up really early, and we were on the private jet, whatever. And I had, my list of questions because it was really so much pressure.
Did you have to submit your questions before?
No, I was a journalist, right? But then her minder, whatever, head of comms came up and said, just what kind of thing are you going to be asking her just so that I can prepare her? And I panicked, and I just handed him my sheet of questions, and I went, here are my questions.
Written in crayon.
Lee Sales would not do that. And then there was turbulence, and it was all just this drama. There's a lot of pressure when you're interviewing a Prime Minister because also the stuff I'm interested in, firstly, I don't know a lot about policy, and I'm not Lee Sales, and the stuff I'm interested in is not necessarily the stuff they want to talk about. So, it's a high wire.
And then what happens when you interview someone with a very high profile, and this happens with No Filter, you interview someone and then you write an article about it, right? And this happens in this episode, and Evelyn has to balance trying to grab attention and go, please read my very important interview, with trying not to misrepresent what she said. And so what comes out is sacrifice children for influence. Sarah, that was a really fun one. Do you remember in the writer's room we kept coming up with drawings of her putting children in a cauldron and I think that was really fun because we all knew what she meant, but it was easy to take it out of context.
So what were you playing with?
We needed something that could be taken wildly out of context. So Evelyn knows that she's writing a slightly controversial title to this story.
She's writing a good headline.
She's writing a great headline.
Yep.
And when Elizabeth says it, you can see that she's kind of tweaking, going, oh, this is juicy. So she writes the headline, and I think she knows that it's big.
It's provocative,
but it's provocative. But I don't think she anticipates that it's going to turn.
Well, she's a journalist and she's got a good story, because the other thing I meant to say about interviewing politicians is that it's impossible to get anything interesting out of them.
Yeah.
So the pressure to have something, because they've, especially on a campaign trail, they've done the same interview. They don't give you anything. The same thing again and again and again, sound bites. And so anything you get that's just slightly, you're like, oh, there's my angle.
Yeah.
So I think she was being a good journalist.
Yeah, I think so too.
Often when you think about cancel culture or a pile-on, you think sexist, racist, someone has said something awful. But what's actually more fun is when the person hasn't intentionally done any of those things and the mistake isn't so black and white.
Yeah.
And that happens throughout. And that was something that we played with because we wanted the empathy to still sit with Evelyn because she didn't intend to ruin Elizabeth Miles's, potential for being Prime Minister.
No, because nothing is ever black or white. That's something, I think that's a big theme of the show, and this sort of lack of empathy that people have now because of social media. But I think it's far more interesting as well is if it is more complicated.
Yeah.
Everything's complicated.
And you assume when you've written that story that everyone's going to read every word of it. And of course, they don't. Sarah, one thing there was a lot of discussion about in the writer's room and then actually onward from there was about how we represent the internet. Remember that? We didn't know how to convey the pressure, the loudness, the ubiquity of things pinging on your phone. And at one stage we wanted a chorus,
because it's like the Greek chorus, the internet, isn't it?
Yeah, it went through so many iterations.
I know. And I feel like we sort of just avoided it by the end because it was all getting a bit much, and it was stylistically it was a lot.
Yeah.
And to work in with the director's vision.
Why did you have a chorus, like a singing chorus?
And then Jessie, do you remember at one point we were going to animate avatars?
Yes. Oh my God, that was so fun. So we were going to have a guy holding a fish, for example, as his profile picture, but then he starts talking his negative comments. So everyone was their profile picture talking. Wow. We're very Sundance Festival.
That would have been
this is what happens in a writer's room is you get swept away. It's
we were taken by how great our ideas were.
And you don't want to handbrake that.
That is an amazing idea. So how does that idea die? What's the process by which that idea gets put to sleep?
I think once we got to scripting stage and we thought about the world that we were creating, it's a dramedy. There was a lot of emotion to it, and this person, the marriage breakdown, the whole season, Evelyn's trying to get her daughter to sleep over at her house. So there's this, emotionally fraught. We couldn't fit it in.
But I think that the way it came out, and that was a surprise to me because I hadn't seen it kind of evolve from there, I loved it. There are scenes where Evelyn, she's with Lucy in the sort of shopping or whatever, and she can't be present because it's constantly pinging, and you see the little headlines that are coming up and the almost tweets, and it's constant. I actually thought that made me feel anxious. So I think it was a way of...
And I think we also thought that for season 2, the commentariat is going to get more vicious.
Yeah.
So there's room to sort of develop that further. But it's also, there was one thing, and I think Romina was really great in the room to getting this point across. It's not dynamic watching someone write on their laptop, writing.
But that's the whole
articles.
Yeah, it's not action.
No, it's not action, and it's not dynamic filming a screen and reading comments on screen. And so we sort of had to rely on reportage and have characters talk about something going viral or talk about a backlash, or, there's moments where we do see it where Evelyn's flicking through and it's brilliant, after episode 5 and what happens. And it works really well. And I think the editors and Stuart did a fantastic job of that. But, it's kind of diminishing returns. You can't use that too much.
Exactly, because you've got to feel it build.
Yeah, that's right.
Episode 6 opens with the Elizabeth Miles fallout, and time on site is brought up because people have only been reading the article for 12 seconds. Mia, what have you learned? Whenever we see that, when we see an article going viral but they're only on it for 12 seconds, we start to panic because people are sharing it, and it's not because they think it's a good article, because they are not reading it.
They're not this is so good I don't have to read it. I'm just going to share
exactly.
No, look,
we don't like that.
It's so interesting because clicks is one measure of success, right? A click is how good your headline is, really.
Yeah. At the beginning, 2012, that's all that mattered.
It's all that mattered, and because that's what
we got your click.
You got your clicks, because the way audiences were measured were just on page views, which was clicks. But the problem with that, and this is what the internet discovered, and this is why people were doing 60 posts a day, it didn't matter how long they were on. It was just click, 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 click. And that was how Facebook particularly was helping to amplify things, and you could monetize that way. But the reason that was a bubble that burst is because if someone's just clicking but not reading, it means that it's not good quality because they're not really interested. They just wanted to, click to see the answer.
And there's only so many times that they're going to be unsatisfied before they stop clicking on your articles because they go, you trick me.
Exactly.
I don't need
and
this.
And it's not good for brand. And also it's quantity. So the internet was all about quantity then. And so then when we've looked at, we said there have been times when we've done 50 or 60 posts a day, and, every person had to do 5 posts. But when we've shifted and we've said, okay, we want to change our metric, we look at engaged minutes because, you can see when you put something online how far down someone reads to before they click off. You can see if they clicked on other things in there. You can tell a lot and you can make changes in real time. But if someone obviously spends a lot of time on that article, it means the article's generally higher quality.
And you know what else it means is you can serve more ads. Because
well, that's exactly right too. Yeah.
Because as it goes, the way that it evolved was that the longer they spend, and you'll notice this, you scroll through another ad and you scroll through another. So you saw media trying to get different things. It went from having quite short 200-word posts to then all of a sudden it's 1,000 words, and then they go into this backstory context of Meghan and Harry, and you're back at the documentary and you're going, why are we back at the You're there because there's ads.
And lots of photos, and every time you scroll, every scroll you do, there's more ads are being served,
And there's a moment where Evelyn is on radio and every second sentence is taken out of context. How does that feel when you know that you're going to be misrepresented and you can almost anticipate what social media is going to say? I love that scene
Alan
where
Jones
is it Terry?
Yeah.
She said it first, women aren't putting their hands up, and she's like, I didn't say it like that. Is that sort of another reason why you've just gone, I can't do the live thing?
Yes, because when there's no benefit of the doubt and people willfully want to misrepresent, because people want to be angry. And also Terry is wanting to make it more sensationalist because then that helps him too, because it's like Evelyn Jones tells Terry blah, blah, and that gives his show publicity.
And you're all trying to court headlines as well. You see that now, that it then becomes, the splash on the Daily Mail or whatever. Sarah, a theme that we talked about in the writer's room was matricide, and it was about how feminism almost destroys its elders. And we see the generations and the way feminism is changing over time. Speak to us about that theme throughout the series.
I think it's such a great theme for not only episode 6, but the whole season, really. That idea of intergenerational feminism and how the younger ones sort of
eat the older
ones. And I guess it's because they want to feel validated, because they just constantly need validation.
Well, I think you want to prove yourself as being different and superior and the new thing.
The new thing on the block.
And you want to define yourself. No one actively wants to be like their mother. Like, you want to define yourself by being different to your mother.
Yes. And I think in episode 6, for example, when this really comes alive, and in that panel where, so basically it's like a Q&A style panel, and there is a male host, and then all of the guests are female, one of whom is Carmen Stewart, who's Evelyn's like hero, like a Jermaine Greer type. This is after the Elizabeth Miles debacle, and they all turn on Evelyn. And she, for the first time really, in real time, is being attacked by her own. There's some young players, there's some fourth waivers, there's the second waiver, and it's really hard because they're kind of silencing her and they're telling her to not speak, and she's finding that utterly overwhelming, and she can't articulate what she wants to say.
And the really frustration is real, I think, for anyone who's worked in women's media, where you go, why are a bunch of women just yelling at each other? Like, how did it become this? How did it descend into, and Evelyn says it early on, that the men are over here just getting on with it, whereas the women who are actually all trying to do the same thing are getting caught in the crossfire of different waves.
I remember having a big fight with my mother about Jermaine Greer, because I've been on both sides of this. I've been the younger feminist trying to define herself by tossing out the generation that came before me, which I see now is it's so disrespectful, but it's also disingenuous. And I don't mean that people should just be given respect because they're older than you. But I once wrote, after Jermaine Greer went on Q&A and said that Julia Gillard had a big bum and shouldn't wear a jacket or something, I remember being so outraged about that and writing a piece on Mamamia. Jermaine Greer, it's time to leave the party. You're embarrassing yourself and all of us. It was pretty vicious. And then I sort of, forgot about it. And then I was on Q&A sitting next to Jermaine Greer. The first question, Mia Freedman, you once wrote that Jermaine Greer is a disgrace and should leave the party because she's embarrassing to feminism and she should just shut up. Do you still think that?
What did you say?
And I was sitting next to Jermaine Greer. Like,
I've met her. She has an aura. She has a presence.
Oh my God. And again, it's so easy to trash someone on the internet, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then you meet them and you're like, oh shit. And she was so lovely and gracious to me both before and after that. And I said at the time, which is how I felt, I said, I do regret saying that. And I think that the problem with being Jermaine Greer is the weight of everything you say has to speak for all women of all generations. And she's just got an opinion and she's Jermaine Greer and she's earned her right to say that. But then I've also experienced having younger feminists cancel me and say Mia Freedman's a traitor to feminism. She's a disgrace. How dare she? That used to mystify me and really hurt me. I'm like, no, I'm one of you. But it's like they need to define themselves as being different to their mother's generation of feminism. I understand that.
It's kind of like grasping for relevance, which I think when feminism has become a brand, that's what ends up happening.
There's a very certain stage in life, don't you think, Sarah, that you think that older people don't have anything to teach you and that they're all idiots?
Yeah.
I think especially with feminism, because every generation has been responding to a different set of circumstances and they've had a different battle.
That's right. It's very timely. It's I know.
And so they can't quite understand what Jermaine Greer was responding to is very different to what a feminist now is.
Yeah.
What were the different generations of feminism that you wanted to explore, the different perspectives of feminism?
Well, I guess with Ginny, we have a second waver who, Evelyn's an only child and Ginny was a working mother.
I'm always confused about the waves of feminism. So she's a baby boomer.
Yeah, so they are reductive.
That was the Jermaine Greer's generation, right?
So it's all about working. Then I think that you would say that the third waivers.
Is that us, Gen X, you and me?
Yeah, we're sort of, yes, definitely. Mm-hmm. They're about getting women into positions of power. So you need more than just the job. You need to actually be in a position of power. So that's the third wave. So in terms of Ginny, she wasn't a great maternal present mother to Evelyn, but she thought the best example she can set is by working and being a career woman. And she's right, That
was my mum. Was that your mum, Jessie?
That was my mum too. I mean, my mum was a very maternal mum as well.
Yeah, and I suppose, but I guess that there's also, and this is where
my mum was a bitch. No, she wasn't. I'm joking. But when you said your mum was a maternal mum and I didn't say anything, I was like, my mum's going to listen to this. My mum also was a maternal mum, and she worked part-time. But she worked, and that was unlike all of my friends had stay-at-home mums.
Same. I had a lot of
in
friends
primary
who
school.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting that sort of Gen X generation, it is about, to Evelyn, it's like, I'm running a media company, isn't this feminism? And they're like, but capitalism. Like it's just all kind of complicated.
And so Evelyn has this sort of overt feminism and, it's marketable, it's branded. And so Addie pushes, and we're exploring this more in season 2.
Girl boss feminism.
That, Addie sort of pushes against that and is starting to wonder why everything has to be so gendered. And you're always struggling. You're always angry. You're always mad about something. Like,
is this working for you?
What's so true?
I know. Like, can't you just loosen up and not make everything so gendered?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be so binary. Not that we're moving her into non-binary territory.
Yeah.
But just that idea that she's actually more in tune with Ginny's form of feminism, which is kind of interesting.
Which is also a kind of, there's another sense of burn the whole thing down, which is I think that the younger sort of generation on that discourse show.
You can hear me gulping tea if you're just hearing these terrible, like I laughed in that for the first line in the first episode when Penny says, we write, and we drink tea. And it's like, that's a big thing. I love my tea.
Thank you so much for joining us for episode 2 of Behind the Scenes of Strife. Our final instalment, which will cover episodes 7, 8 and beyond, will drop tomorrow. And if you came to us from Binge, maybe you've just sat down and watched the whole season of Strife, can I suggest that you become a Mamamia Out Louder? We do Mamamia Out Loud 5 times a week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we do our episodes, and then Tuesday and Thursday are subscriber specials. It is myself, Jessie Stevens, Mia Freedman and Holly Wainwright. We are Australia's biggest news and pop culture podcast, and we would love to have you. So come and check out what we do. Bye.